Alright, welcome back to another art stream here at Stitch Media. I'm Jeff. You'll be joining me today as I do some more character design work for the game Terrorarium. What you see on my screen right here is just one of the older designs that I did back when we were coming up with a whole bunch of designs for some of the monsters that would appear in our game, some of the bosses and plants, and we're ready to move on to the next set of monsters in our game. So we're looking for any designs that we think would fit for some of the required interactive monsters that we're going to be playing against. So what I have on screen right now is one of the designs that I had that was selected as being one of the more interesting shapes of the silhouettes that I did way back when we were exploring a whole bunch of potential designs, and I'll kind of pull them up on screen so you can see. So these were the ones that I roughed quite a while back, and soon you might get a glimpse of what some of these look like in their final form. This one in the top left hand corner actually made it into a new version of it. Became a little more like a walking worm slash snail slash bush that emits a poison cloud. So that one actually made it, and now we're looking for the next monster. And so I think the one that I will be proceeding with is this one on the top left, also on the top left here. A coworker mentioned it as being like a demented Groot from like Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought it was an odd shape and had these, like, I forget the term of these, but it was kind of like fungus and clams growing out of the trunk of a tree. It's an actual thing, and so I just was playing with shapes and having different kind of life growing off of it. So from there proceeded to do like a nicer sketch of it, which was this. And while it looks nice and clean and workable, it still didn't feel, at least to me, like it fit or was looking quite dangerous, even though it does have an interesting shape to it. So I'm taking another crack at it, probably for one more try, and to come up with like a better shape, as it were, and give him a little bit more personality. Not so much, I don't quite like these flimsy limbs I gave it, even though I did want to stay away from typical branches. So what I kind of did was do a couple other shapes. Here's a quick version of it, just to change the silhouette a bit, change the angles, change the lines of it so that your eye follows it quite differently, and just those simple tweaks will give it a bit more of a personality rather than just being a trunk of a tree. But one thing that was stressed early on, again, when we were going through all those silhouette sketches, was we did want to stay a little bit away from making everything so anthropomorphic, giving everything 2 legs, 2 arms, a face, and then just making that plant-like. We wanted these things to come from plants and trees first, and then make them a little more and give them features later, arms and legs, and not necessarily always having everything. So we didn't always want to stick a face on everything, or necessarily on arms on everything. So even with this quick sketch I did yesterday, I feel like I did move back into that little area of giving it the same type of appendages. So I do want to change that again. As you see here, I was just trying to work again in adding light and just painting in a bit of tonal work just so you could see the shape rather than working always in 2D, even though 2D is always, at least for myself, always been quicker and faster to adjust. So I'm going to pull up, and again, I should hide this. I'm going to bring it down and work on a new layer to just kind of rework. So again, we're looking at what it was before and the simple shapes of what it might be now. Again, giving it that kind of hunched look, that sag to it, even though this should be a monster that you should be wary about, because what we're going to be using it for is a timed event. So he'll be having to do some interaction that will kill the Mugu every so often. How I'm going to play into that right now, I'm not so sure, because I removed his arms. So I'm going to have to think of ways to bring it back, like make it dangerous. Is he going to shoot something? Right now, the monsters we have in place, one is a proximity guy, so he emits a cloud, so if you get near him or get into his trail, he kills you. The level end boss at the moment is this tentacle monster you might have seen from a few weeks back. That one smashes. So right now I want to be wary of duplicating the same types of ways that these guys would kill Mugu. So I don't want to reproduce smashing again. And I think the easiest thing to do might be for it to be shooting something. How that easy that might actually be for the devs to actually work into play, I'm not so sure. But at least I'll explore, at least I'll look for this character and see, and maybe it'll come across as like it being to do something that's not necessarily just like hitting, smashing, or throwing things. Maybe there's something else in there in the design that helps think of, come up with a different way of killing Mugu. So I'm going to start by just going back over my semi-painting. Pick my sketch type tool. And again, I probably just want to be really aware of the silhouettes. I do want to give him legs. Like again, if we look at the original, it was a taller, thin type guy, most likely mobile, but I felt didn't quite have the heft to it that I liked. It was a little too vertical, and its lines were always a little too parallel for me. So I really wanted to change that up. So simple things like this is like, you know, in nature, are there really always, you know, not many parallel lines? If you look at your own body, you might think that there's a, you know, you draw your arms, your fingers, your legs, you might draw them as, you know, with parallel lines if you're outlining things. But if you actually look closer, there's very minimal amount of really parallel lines in your body. Like even the fingers you see are angled, like tapered. They're tapered a little bit. If you look at the palm of your hands, or even your forearms and your arms, things are always angled in certain ways. There's no real two even lines that would never meet. So it's the same thing for like when you're looking at, I think when I want to create an expressive character, is be aware of making things look a little too stiff. And I think that's what I kind of fell into with the first design. It was an interesting character, but it was also very stiff. So what I'm working on now is maybe thinking about what type of personality this character would have just by shape alone, outline. I think right now it has this kind of goofy look to it. So what I just did there is kind of, if we look back to the earlier sketch, I've really lowered his hips, as it were. His legs are a lot shorter. There is a bit more of what can be considered a belly, if that's what was right there, and really giving these big clunky feet that are a bit wider than the first time around might help. I don't want it also to be too cartoony, so that's another trap that I gotta watch out for and kind of adjust as I work on this guy. One of the things that I don't want to do right now is make a face, so I don't want to put eyes on there, I don't want to put a nose, but using these clam-like structures, I wish I actually wrote it down what they were actually called. These growths on the trunk, and there's a bit more if you look further down. See, like, I don't know, moss and kind of weed-like things coming off them, so I think I want to keep those. What I do like about that sketch is the twisting pattern that you see to the trunk. I always thought that was quite nice. So trying to think of ways I can kind of maintain that even in this version, that things are constantly twisting. So right now I'll probably just get put a belly button on him. So again, part of the effort here is making it, you know, some design decisions like having this twisted texture to the trunk while also making it kind of look natural, as in it's supposed to kind of twist this way, like So again, at the same time, I do want to reference back to what the original drawing was, and why I do that is, even though I'm working on something that's going to be of better fidelity, it's also, I might get drawn down into some another path that probably loses what made the original sketch interesting. So if I look back to the original sketch, I think it's just the weird proportions, the mouths of these clams that kind of make up this this face, not having a proper head, and then again proportions and where do these arms come from. I think those were the big things I really want to keep around, so I gotta look back and see how I can put that back in. So yeah, right now it's looking a little too goofy, and I think that has a lot to do with the curves of the belly and then the stubby feet. So I want to rework that a little. The thing I can do to make it look a little more aggressive is make things a little sharper. So now it's really flat and wide. At the same time, I think that still fits the twisting nature of this guy. but I do want to kind of draw in some of that mossy like bits. In a weird way, this might read as like curly chest hair on this guy. So again, what you don't see right now is me kind of browsing and looking at trees. Probably for some inspiration, as in like, what would make an interesting upper part of him? How would it kind of give a sense of movement and character? And well, even though I've been trying to avoid putting branches and making arms out of those branches, I do feel like it needs another appendage just to kind of give that sense of, offer that sense of that it can do something to the Mugu. Like right now I'm thinking of what can it do? Can it shoot something out of the top of its empty trunk hole like here? In the other version, there were like flowers that were coming out of the top of it. I still put that in. One thing we're trying to do and push is always a sense of tension, and by that means like two opposite types of feelings kind of working against one another. And in this sense, it might just be something beautiful versus something dangerous. So I'm thinking, what would very pretty plants look like? I'm just trying to think here. Again, start a new layer every time I want to keep something separate and make sure it doesn't muck around with all my other lines. Keep a board of like plant inspiration. All right, some beautiful looking plants. Let's see what I have. Would want it to twist and come out. This should have angled that one a bit differently in space, but it doesn't give me much room to do another plant underneath it. So it's okay. Cool. So I haven't put any of those clam things on there yet. What I want to figure out is what this character does to really impact the Mugu. What is necessary for this thing to become threatening? Right now it doesn't seem like there is much there. Give it some knees right there. So, I think it's coming along all right. I think already it has more character than this guy, almost. I mean, this one still has arms and those little clam things, so that does offer quite a bit. I think the shape is coming up quite nicely. So what to do with how it kills? Again, I think I've kind of limited myself in that sense. With actively trying to not put branches on this guy. Well, maybe I do, since that was in the original sketch. So I'm doing right now is just very roughly sketching what would be two giant fists. Not sure if I want to go in that way. It's very I think it's very standard. I think could be kind of cute with like these two giant fists made of like giant balls of leaves. I think there's other interesting ways that I can approach this guy. Maybe before that, I'll work on putting in the clams. Wish I knew what they were called, that way I could just search them and see what they look like in real life. Let me just search, see if I can find something. Oh, here they are. If anyone's searching for them, Australian tree clams. I guess that's what they're called. If you want to see what I'm looking and help a guy called Mark Schwartz out, he's on Flickr and he tagged a photo called Australian tree clams. They're kind of disturbing when you see them. There looks like some dead trees with clams growing out of them. Is it just like a mollusk? Tree clams. It's weird. I see other photos of mollusks growing, but only that one same picture I used as a reference for it from that Flickr guy, the Australian tree clam photo. I wonder if there's anything else like that. It's so weird. This thing's so bizarre. So yeah, if any of you are listening and are interested in what exactly these are, it's called the Australian Banksia bush. And basically, the Banksia seeds look like these clams, but they are coming off trees. Really interesting, really interesting. Anyways, that's what I'm putting in right now. It's a really odd site, and you guys should take a look at it. Yeah, as it were, right now, I'm just looking to draw in a whole bunch of them, just at different angles, to really capture that that look like they're just all over this tree. I have to put a few more. Okay, so now I have this weird looking tree stump. But I still haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do for some way to kill the Mugu. I guess if it comes down to it, I put back hands, even though I'm trying to avoid that. I did put it back in this version where you see like it would fall pretty much where one might suspect shoulders would be, and then that really makes the top of the crooked part of the stump the head. In the sketch version of it, the silhouetted version, the arms came out really from the top of the trunk. Ooh, what happened there? You know, they're coming up from up here, and big, weird finger hands. I don't necessarily think it makes for a really nice character, so I really want to avoid that. Right now I have problems just trying to think this guy through.